Welcome, everyone, to this circle. Welcome to Southminster Steinhauer United Church. I've been here a long time, and I still trip over it. Isn't that funny? Welcome to all of you who join us, perhaps for the first time in a while, or those who hold the circle for us week upon week. We welcome you as we welcome those who will join us online in the coming weeks. It's important that we find space for each of us. Whether we've been here a lot or not, there is space in this circle for us. We all come to this morning with different attitudes, with different places on our journey, and with different things that we need out of our time together. Regardless of what that is, may there be openness, and may there be a place in this circle that we might open ourselves to the fullness of who we are as community and what we might do for and with each other. When we come to this place and we say it's a safe place, we mean that it's a safe place no matter what we're thinking at any given time, no matter who we are at any given time. No matter what labels or identities we might affix ourselves, we are welcome, and it's safe to be who we need to be in this place. Bold, timid, questioning, and everything in between. So as we move into this time together, may we experience a sense of welcome, a sense of belonging, and may we come to this morning just as we are, because we're welcome just that way. Let's sing our way into the circle. I don't know about you, but one of the best ways to begin a day is with a sense of gratitude. And it's with that, in that spirit and with that attitude that we approach our morning together. Gratitude for this new day, for our very breath, for another opportunity to love and be loved. It's gratitude also for the place we find ourselves. And this place that we now sit here in this place for the reality that is this ancient and beautiful land, part of our Mother Earth, special and honored in its very existence. We do share gratitude for this land cared for by the indigenous ones who have dwelled here for many, many generations, for the Cree people, for the Papas Chase First Nation, for the Métis of Central Alberta, for all the tribes and groups that have created this place. We honor, too, that we, like all of humanity, are but borrowers of the land. We recognize the hurt that's come from, as a result of the land, and the hope of reconciliation and partnership. We have gratitude for all those who now call this place home. That we find a home in this city called Edmonton. That we find a home in this structure built by some in this room, honored and appreciated by all of us. And finally, we share gratitude for this community, made unique and strong by each and every person that is a part of us. No matter how large or small the patch that we call home, we can call ourselves grateful. And it's in that spirit that we recognize, that we honor our reconciling ways. So let's light this candle as we do each and every time we gather. Let's light it for the light of the stars that remind us of our cosmic beginnings. Let's light it for the spark that dwells within each of us, that reminds us of our relatedness and our connection to each other. Let's light it for the creativity and wisdom that it inspires, that it symbolizes the power and strength of love and light in our lives. Let's light it for the ordinariness of a flame, to remind us of our evolving awareness of the value, the specialness, the sacredness of all. To center ourselves, to focus our hearts and our bodies and our minds, to strengthen our intentions for how we live, not just in this gathering in the next hour, but our lives as we move into the day. May we share these words together. As we awaken to this day, Some are stirring to consciousness with hope and gratitude. Others waken to fear or sadness. The dawn of this new day brings many realities to light for each of us. We come to awaken together to the joys and sorrows we carry, the rest and restlessness of the night. May we open to one another and to the depth of time as we create this circle together and are held by love. May it be so in so many ways. Now is our time for all ages, and I'd welcome anyone who would like to come to the carpet to be invited to come forward to share time together. I was looking at my bookshelf this week and found a book that's very old. I don't know how old, but I remember looking at it when I was a kid, and I know my kids looked at it when they were kids, smaller kids. Does this look familiar? Richard Scarry, this author, he still has books on the bookshelves. In any case, I was thinking about this because one of the reasons I used to love these books is because when I was really small, they just had a lot of pictures and words next to them. So, you know, like in the, I don't know, what have I got on the slide up here on the wall? Oh, so look, it's just like it's the neighborhood, and there's things going on in the neighborhood, and then many things had words attached to them. So, you know, it was just, I guess it was a way to learn to read, learn different words, and to see all these great pictures. That's kind of why I liked this book. And then I was thinking about all of these things today, and how all the things I remember about learning about jobs, like things people do, they were all things that happen when the sun is shining. Maybe that's really simple and easy, and you kind of understand that. But then, you know, as I got older, I thought, you know what? When I go to sleep, if I go to sleep when it's nighttime, there's lots of things that happen when I'm sleeping that I don't often think about. So I wondered if we could think about that for a minute, because there are lots of things that happen at nighttime. This book was called All Day Long. Well, what about all night long? So I thought maybe we could help Richard Scarry out with his next book idea by thinking about what goes on when we're all sleeping at night. So can you think of any jobs that people need to do in the nighttime?
I know one.
Do you know one?
Not really people jobs, but owls try to find light or something.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't have a people job, but this is very good. We have an animal job, like animals like owls who hunt for mice when it's nighttime. It's very good. What else happens at night? Do some people have to stay up at night to work when the rest of us are sleeping? Michael has an idea. Oh, Nathan has one. Being a pilot, that's a good one. So some planes fly through the night, and we need pilots who like to stay awake at night to do that job. Any other ideas? Print the newspaper? What's that? Oh, wait, yes, a newspaper, yes. Right, so if people get their newspaper in the morning, some people have to work through the night to make sure that that gets printed and delivered. That's totally true. What if you were to get sick in the middle of the night? What happens then? Well, mums and dads, absolutely. Absolutely, mums and dads have to work at night, but what else? Doctors or nurses, hospitals, whole hospitals and clinics have to run through the night, don't they? And take care of people overnight. There's another idea over here. Oh, yeah. All kinds of emergency people like firefighters and all that, because fires don't only light in the daytime, do they? Sometimes they light at night. That's okay, if it might come back to you.
Office cleaners.
Oh boy, is that a good one. Office cleaners. Some people who have to clean up all the things when there's not many people around. They have to do it when it's more empty. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, people stocking the grocery store shelves so that when people come shopping in the morning, they have things to buy. Another idea? That's true. Musicians work at night too. Custodians work at night sometimes. Yeah. Treating our water. Oh yeah. All those things we take for granted. Water and power. There's people that have to make sure that's all working, even if it's nighttime. Oh, there's so many ideas. We could think of a lot, couldn't we? Well, anyway, I was thinking that in the midst of all of this thought, one of the things that we're doing in Kid Spirit this month is talking about gratitude. Gratitude is a fancy word for saying thank you. And when we think about all the things that we're thankful for or grateful for, sometimes we think of all the things in our lives, like, oh, well, you know, my mom or my dad or my family or my clothes or my toys or all those things. But there's a lot of things that we forget. We take them for granted. That means we sometimes forget about them, and we forget that they're really, really important. Some of those things we honor here, like at the beginning of our time together on a Sunday, we honor the land and the earth because sometimes we just forget. So we want to make sure we're grateful for it. Another thing that we've been talking about this morning are all those people that when many of us are getting ready for bed, they're thinking about going to work. And they're taking turns with us. They're taking turns so that if they're working, we sleep. And then maybe when they sleep, some other people will work. And isn't that the way that a good community works? We take turns for each other so that some people can work when others rest. It's a really good way to be community and to share with each other. Yeah. Oh, it's a very good question. If people are working in the night, when will they buy all their stuff? Well, you know, sometimes I wonder, some stores might be open. Some stores might be open in the night. I also wonder if sometimes they have friends or family members that might do some shopping for them during the daytime. It's a very good question. We'll have to ask, when we next meet someone who works in the night, we'll have to ask them, when do you buy your oranges on days off? Very good, yes, very good. So, in the spirit of gratitude, in the spirit of thankfulness, we honor all those things we sometimes forget. We honor all those people who work and who take turns with us in our communities to do really important things. So, on that, we are going to take our time to go to Kid Spirit now.
Mark Nepo has written a series of short pieces that he's published in a book called The Book of Awakening, and they're set up so that there's a reading for each day of the year and then some reflective questions. And one of his pieces is called Taking Turns. The gift and responsibility of relationship is to take turns. Doing the dishes, putting up the storm windows, giving the other the chance to dive for treasures without having to worry about making dinner. While one explores the inner, the other tends to the outer. A great model of this is how pearl divers search the deep in pairs. Without scuba tanks or regulators, one waits at the surface, tending the lines. To the other, who soft steps the sand for treasures he hopes he'll recognize. He walks the bottom, watching the leaves of vegetation sway and sways himself till she tugs the cord. He swallows the little air that he has left, and then he ascends. Aboard, they talked for hours, placing what was seen, rubbing the rough and natural pearl. In the morning, she dives and fills their baskets, and he counts the time with his hands wrapped about her line. Quite plainly, these pearl divers show us the work of being together in the miracle of trust. We must take turns. Whoever is on the surface must count the airtime left so that the one below can dive freely. This is the witness of a contemporary poet. Toward the end of the first gospel that we have in the collection that we call the Christian Scriptures, the Gospel of Mark, that was written sometime after 70 in the first century, towards the end of that gospel comes a story we've often heard, a story that is often told in the week leading up to the festival of Easter. A story about a time that comes near the end of the life of Jesus, just shortly before the narrative moves on to tell us about his execution. And this is the story of Jesus and his friends after having shared a meal with one another, making their way into the darkness of the night. Jesus and his friends came to an area called Gethsemane, a garden. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go pray." And he took Peter and James and John with him. And he descended into a sinkhole of dreadful agony. He said to them, "I feel desperate enough now that I could die in this moment. Stay here and keep vigil with me." Going a little ahead of them, he fell to the ground and he prayed. And he came back and he found the three of them asleep. And he said to Peter, "Simon, you went to sleep on me. Couldn't you stay awake just for a single hour? Stay alert. This is a dangerous time. Don't be naive. Part of you is eager and ready for anything, but another part is as lazy as an old dog sleeping by a fire." Jesus went back and prayed again. Returning once again, he found them sound asleep. They simply couldn't keep their eyes open. And he came back a third time and he said, "Are you going to sleep all night? You've slept long enough. Get up. Let's be going. I'm about to be betrayed." This is a story from the Jesus tradition passed down to us in writings from the first century, coming from a paraphrase by Eugene Peterson in his collection called The Message. don't know about you, but as we've crossed over into the fall equinox, in the midst of very overcast skies and cold temperatures, I've found it harder and harder to wake up in the morning and not go back to sleep. In that bright, early light of summer, somehow it seems easier to leave sleep behind and rise into a new day. I've often thought we have two kinds of friends in our lives. We have those people who can stay up with us all night, and we have those people who can get up for us in the morning. We have those friends who can resist the onslaught of sleep, and we have those who can rouse themselves from the depths of sleep. I'm not the one to stay up with you. I'm the one to get up with you. And maybe that's why I identify with that story from the Jesus tradition. Because he was in need of some friends who could stay up with him, who could stay up with him in the dark night of the soul. 3 first-century storytellers give us some version of this story I just read to us. And in each case, that ancient story is set in a time of literal darkness and a time of metaphorical darkness. It was after they had shared an evening meal, and darkness had come, and they had gone to a garden where they were surrounded by the wisdom of ancient olive trees. And all 3 of the stories tell us he went there to pray. He went there to pray among these trees that had stood for hundreds and hundreds of years, that had witnessed so much human history. And amidst these trees, he sought wisdom. He sought strength. He sought courage. In a time that was a time of deep darkness both within him and around him. The Roman authorities were conspiring with the temple elite and were seeking an alliance with some of his followers so that they could arrest him and charge him with treason and blasphemy. The civil and religious authorities each had their reasons for wanting him dead, but only the empire had the power to eliminate him. And the politicians and the soldiers needed the help of his friends to do it in a way that didn't begin a public protest. And as the tensions were mounting, the storytellers give us a Jesus who was deeply afraid, knowing he was a target and they were closing in on him. And so he takes his nearest and dearest with him, and he asks only one thing of them: stay with me and stay awake. He needed his friends to be present, and he needed them to be alert. Even when this story is written decades later and offered in 3 distinct ways to 3 different communities that are each struggling with their own unique darkness, can we hear this story and can we hear this question and think that it is only for these individuals in that particular night? Is it not the question for every spiritual being in a human experience? Can we stay with? And can we stay awake? Can we stay with what is? And can we stay awake? And just like these friends of Jesus, we find ourselves living in a time when it's hard to keep our eyes open. It's tempting to close our eyes to poverty or to war, or to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people from their homelands, or to the threat of nuclear disaster. It's hard to keep our eyes open to the rude and uncivil exchanges that dominate public life. It's hard to keep our eyes open to natural disaster after natural disaster after natural disaster, or to the number of species growing extinct, or the number of individuals on our planet that face hunger or homelessness, to the number of friends diagnosed with cancer or Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. It's hard to stay present. It's hard to stay awake to what's happening in our world. Legend has it that when Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, rose from under the Bodhi tree, a monk came up to him in utter amazement at his litness, at his luminosity, and he said to him, "O Holy One, what are you? You must be a god." And the Buddha said, "No, not a god." And the dazzled monk persisted. He said, "Well, then you must be a diva." And the Buddha said, "No, not a diva." And he kept walking. And the monk pursued him and said, "Well, then you must be the Brahman himself." And the Buddha said, "No, not the Brahma." And the monk, who was so confused, said, "Then tell me, what are you?" And the Buddha said, "I am awake." Maybe Jesus of Nazareth, maybe the Buddha, maybe so many of our great spiritual teachers share the experience of staying awake, being awake, knowing that even though the body sleeps, the heart stays awake. Knowing that what it is to be most truly alive is to be awake to the pain and the beauty of what is in each moment. And the reality is, none of us can stay awake permanently. We are creatures that rehearse our death daily by slipping into hours of sleep, escaping the realities of conscious life, and waking and rising to awareness again day after day. We can't survive as healthy beings without sleep. We can't survive the pain of this world in the hypervigilance of being immersed always in its raw reality. Nor can we truly stay present to the utter beauty and magnificence of what it is to be alive in this world either. So we live in this tension between just sleepwalking through our lives, managing to see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, taking care of our own, and doing everything in our power to avoid those things that would keep us up at night. We live in the tension between that sleepwalking through life, or living like a deer caught in perennial headlights, unable to close our eyes to anything, paralyzed with the pain of our wakefulness. It occurs to me that the wisdom of the divers could have helped the disciples find a better way. That the divers has something to teach us all about how to stay with and how to stay awake. What if being a spiritual community is about taking turns? What if it is about collectively keeping vigil? What if it is about, as a community, staying with what is, refusing to let go of the dream of what could be, and sharing the responsibility in a sustainable way, so that some of us are always awake and some of us are always preparing to awake. Someone will be on watch and someone will wake us and rouse us from our unconsciousness to respond with love and with compassion. Diving deep has many dangers. Surely one of the strategies to diminish the danger is to dive in pairs, or, like the pearl divers, to take turns so that someone is always watching the time and someone is watching the line while someone is attending to the deep. This summer, when Dawn and I were in Northern California, walking on the headlands near Mendocino, our attention was drawn to a small craft that was just off the coast, and it seemed like it was abandoned. We watched the boat for a long time, and after a while, a diver came to the surface and made his way into the boat. And I thought what a foolish thing he was doing, diving out there all by himself, diving for abalone on his own. And then a short while later, a second diver surfaced, and he was helped into the boat by the first, and then they hauled in their respective equipment when there was two of them to haul up their tanks. And I was struck by the even greater wisdom of the pearl divers taking turns, where they take turns diving into all that is, and they take turns being vigilant on the surface, taking care to attend to the time and the line. I think how differently that ancient story of the dark night of the soul might have been told had those disciples taken turns staying awake. Someone would have been alert. Someone would have been present to give comfort and provide support. Someone would be resting until their turn came. They would share the watch, alternating the work of staying awake and balancing the resources between the three of them for vigilance and rest. We take our place in this circle to take turns, to be responsible, to wake each other up, to relieve one another, to share the work of staying with and staying awake, and to ensure that someone is always watching, someone is witnessing what is, someone is calling power to account, someone is holding the vision, and someone is passing the vision to the generation that comes behind us. Someone is holding the values and passing the values to the one who comes next. Someone is holding the beloved community we perpetuate all these centuries later, so that collectively we can stay inoculated against apathy and against indifference and against ignorance, because someone will always be awake to inspire and awaken another. That we take turns repairing the world, awakening one another to fairness and to equity and to peace, to non-discrimination, to generosity, to compassion. We take this time to think about what it is our turn requires of us. We continue in a spirit of prayer, bringing our attention to those places in our lives and in our world that need our care and our love. And so we pray with one another. We bring our attention to the mystery and miracle of this moment, to the long story of the universe, to the gift of being, to taking our place in the ever-evolving story of becoming. We bring our attention to some of the painful truths of our time, to all that is endangered by arrogance, or greed, or ignorance, or indifference. Beyond our postmortems of despair, we dare to imagine a new narrative that takes us beyond the old script of domination into a new story of kinship. We bring our attention to the places of grief, to the places of fear and hate, to the places of poverty and violence, to the occupation of one people by another, to the imposition of one ideology on another, where the sheer energy of survival robs the soul of its capacity to imagine anything but the same old story. We bring our attention to the people and places where illness or death, secrets and lies conspire, where discrimination and recriminations, where despair and depression keep us from hope. May we awaken one another to do what we can do, to inspire each other to be a counter-narrative to the dominance of empire, to be a beloved community of radical equals. We bring our attention to the creativity that's inherent in every being, in every creature, to our resilience and our adaptive capacity for life, to our abilities to bring grace and mercy to every situation, to bring life out of death. We bring our attention that in those moments we can stay with, be with, stay awake, waken one another, that we can share the joys and gifts of life as we give and create community with one another. In the name of all the ways we express our love. Amen. we go from this time with one another. We go in the strength of the light we create together and the energy that we create as we transform our light, each of us taking it into particular circles in which we live and move and have our being, the particular opportunities that are ours, and the ways in which we stay awake with and for one another in the difficult and dark times of life. We go together, and we go in the spirit of song.